Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you aboard the Airport Adventures, Flight 926-2020, from Philly to wherever you want to go. All carry-on items should be now stowed securely in an overhead bin or under the seat in front of you. All aisles and exitways should be clear. All electronic devices should be off or on airplane mode. As we leave the gate, please make sure your seatbelt is fastened. To fasten, insert the metal tip into the buckle and adjust the strap so it's low and tight across your lap. To release the belt, lift the top of the buckle. Remain seated with your seatbelt securely fastened anytime the seatbelt sign is on. Even if the sign is off, we ask that you keep the seatbelts fastened while seated in case we encounter any turbulence. Please take the time to find the closest exit to you. Keep in mind that the exits can be located behind you. Once again, we welcome you aboard the Airport Adventures, Flight 926-2020, to anywhere you want to go. And thank you for flying the Airport Adventures.
Alrighty then. Good morning. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome to another episode of the Airport Adventure, the Runway podcast show. A place where we're here live and direct, and we're able to take what we will consider the concept of the airport and apply it to the podcast show, where literally we want to take either someone or something on the runway and allow it to take off. So, welcome to the airport adventure. I'm your host, Cleus Glory Young, and I have my lovely co host, Flair Musu, on the other end. And if you can introduce yourself, Flair Muchu.
Good morning, Captain. How are you?
Hey, good morning. I'm good. And yourself?
Oh, I'm okay. How was your flight?
My flight was wonderful. Getting in here this morning, got up real early. I was so excited about today's show that I got up real early and prepped the flight. Come on here today. So, what about you?
Oh, well, it was great. Actually, my whole weekend flight was really great.
Okay.
Yesterday, I was out all night in another flight, but
Mm,
it was great.
okay. All right. So, you ready for today?
Yes, I am.
So, all the audience listeners that are out there, remember you can log on to either our Facebook page, which is Cleus Young, or you can find us on what is called Twitch, which is the Airport Adventure, or you can find us on YouTube, which is also the Airport Adventure, or you can log on to our what is called LinkedIn platform, where you can find us there on the Glory Young. So these are four different platforms that you're able to find the Airport Adventure, the Runway. And also, if you want to chime in and be a part of what we're doing, you can go to our YouTube page and chime in with our chat room, where we're able to have a dialogue with you. Or if you feel like you have the context of saying, hey, let me call in and talk to the guest or the host, or the co-host, then feel free to do so. The number is 267-704-9294. Once again, 267-704-9294. So today is very interesting. Um, what is it that we have in our suitcase today, Musu?
Oh, wow. I'm sure we are going. My luggage is full of bullying.
Mm.
Bullying, yes, on the
Oh my
street, in the
goodness.
school, in the community, in the home, everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's the same thing with my luggage too. We packed today a jam-packed show in our luggage around the concept of bullying,
Ooh,
which, as you just mentioned, it's in the street, it's in the home, it's in the schools, it's in the workplace, it's all over.
oh yeah.
So today we're bringing out the luggage and we're going to unfold some things as we put the topic of bullying on the runway. Um, and it's quite interesting because over the years I've been dealing with this topic,
Mm,
and it's quite interesting that I actually see that there's a big misconception with the concept of bullying. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted it to be placed on the runway where we could have actually a more in-depth conversation around it, where we're able to get that thing going to a whole new destination.
mm.
So what's your thought on that?
Oh, as you said, bullying is not just, most of the time, I think when they say bullying, I think about schools. But
Mm.
you can't imagine, even in the homes,
Mm.
in relationships, there are
And,
bullying. And that's my own main focus today, in the homes, the bullying in the homes.
mm. And that's where I'm glad you mentioned that, where you said, hey, once you mention bullying, the concept goes directly to the school. And
Yeah.
that's the misconception that so many people have, that it only takes place in the school.
Ah,
Which is directly coming from the home. So that's typically where the bullying process starts.
mhm.
So we're gonna be diving into this topic today, and if you're out there again, once again, if you want to chime in onto today's topic, which is going to be bullying, and we're putting that on the runway, feel free to do so on our YouTube channel, which is the Airport Adventure, or our Twitch channel, which is the Airport Adventure, or if you're live on our Facebook page, which is Cleus Young, or on our LinkedIn page, which is Glory Young. And as I said earlier, you can also call in. Our phone number is 267 704 9294. Once again, 267 704 9294. And you can also go to our chat room on the YouTube channel and you can chime in as well. So, um, the first thing that I looked at is what you just said, the misconception, and typically people start with this concept directly affiliated with the schools.
Mm,
And the reason for that is because it's predominantly expressed in the school. So people now associate it with, hey, it's in the school that this thing take place, and not in the homes or in the workplace or in the community. So today we're gonna really have an in-depth discussion around it. So as we unload our suitcases, right, we get to have a meaningful dialogue around this topic. And hopefully by the end of the show, someone is able to look at it from a different point of view. And the whole concept behind that now, if you're able to see something from a different angle, then you can address it from a different angle. And it's quite interesting, right?
uh-huh.
Um, I did a series of bullying engagements, whether it was theatrical productions, um, personal, professional development for teachers and staff,
Mm,
workshops for the community. At one point, we even did a TV show around bullying. So it's something that I'm well versed in. But
mm,
beyond that, I started to look at it that I wanted to have a conversation around this topic today because it is playing out in society right now, and many people are not aware of it.
mhm.
So we're gonna have an in-depth conversation around that as well. Um, so I'm glad you start off where you said, "Hey, they have this misnotion that it only happens in the school." Um, Let me ask you: have you ever dealt with it from a personal standpoint?
Well, just as we said, I'm going to start with what happened to me in the street, bullying in
Okay.
the street when I came to US here. So
Mm,
one day I went to 52nd and Walnut Street.
okay.
There is an Asian store there where we used to go shop for our food. I went, mind you, it's a one-way street.
Yes.
I saw a parking space in between two cars.
Mm.
So I said, okay, I can park here. And I started backing up into the parking space. And out of nowhere, I'm looking at my in my mirror and I see one of my brothers, African American, and he came and stood right in the empty space. And he's waving to me like, you can't park here, you can't park here. Okay, I said, wait a minute. I checked outside, there was no sign to say do not park.
Park.
So
Okay.
I'm like, okay, what's going on? And I tried to back up again into the space. He stood right in that spot.
Mm.
And I widened my window down and I said, but what is the problem? He's like, you are not going to park here. You can't park here. You seem like you're just coming from Africa. You don't even know how to drive. You are not going to park there. You see my car? I don't want you to back up and hit my car. He
Mm.
started calling me names. I said, wait a minute. This is not just happening to me from my own brother, for that matter, you know. Because when we're coming here, we want to talk about races, we expect the whites to be racist to us.
Mm-hmm.
And for a minute, I'm sitting there, say, what is going on? I say, it's an empty space. I think I should park. No, you are not parking here. You can't park here. And that really made me feel so bad, Cleo. I feel so bad because that was the least I was expecting from my own brother
People.
to treat me
Mm.
that way. And so some few people came out. I think it was an African guy he had a shop there, and he came up to me. He said, "Miss, don't park there. Just go look for another space." I
Mm.
had to move and go look for another space. I came outside, I parked, and I came out entering the store. He came up to me again. I'm gonna call the immigration on you. I'm gonna call the immigration on you. You are not
Mm.
supposed to be here. I said, oh my God. So, do you know how many of us, how many thousands of people face bullying, not just from even white people, from our
Of our
own?
own. Yes.
Yes. Mm,
So, as I listen attentively to your expression of what happened, right?
mm,
So I could pick some things out of that. And one of the things that I picked out of it is that um, the way he expressed, especially when he said, "Hey, I'm gonna call immigration on you," right?
mhm,
That is the tactic of what a bully does.
mm,
And when he says, "Hey, I'm gonna call immigration on you,"
mhm,
that's actually saying that I'm gonna intimidate you for you to be in a position at that moment where
right,
you're the lesser person.
mm,
So one thing people have to understand out there, when you're dealing with a bullying situation, the bully find ways to have what you call control or
yeah,
power over the victim. So
mhm,
if I tell you that, hey, I'm going to call immigration on you, right?
mhm,
Automatically, if you're not in a rightful position where you're legal, right? What
mhm.
is it that you're going to do at that
Oh,
particular time?
wrong. You start running like.
All right. So now the bully is exercising their power or their control over the victim.
Mm,
So if you're out there and you're listening to this, one of the aspects that you really want to take a hold of is when a bully is in the presence of the victim, they utilize whatever they can utilize to have control or power over the victim.
mhm.
The next thing that I heard you talk about was that you came from Africa and this is your African brother, right?
Yes.
A component of that, as I listen attentively, I could tell you that it's not only in just your context that it happens, because when I looked at it, we did an event actually around this on Black History Month
Mm,
a couple of years ago, and we were looking at it. How did we get here? Because
mm,
no one just willfully got up and say, "Hey, I want to go over here and just work for
mhm,
nothing."
mhm,
And when we looked at the event, we orchestrated the event where we show you the bullying component of how people were bullied, right? The
Mm-hmm.
power, exercise the power and control of someone and take them from their place of where they're living into another place. And over in that context now, you're looking at it how they exercise their power and their control over those that were enslaved.
Right.
So when you look at it from a standpoint, as we talked about this topic and we started off and said, hey, most people may think that this is something that only happens in the school.
Mm-hmm.
Quite frankly, when we did the event, we showed you how this was something that was actually a part of society
Mm-hmm.
a long time ago, as you talked about those who were enslaved and brought from another country over into different countries. They weren't brought there just because they wanted to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Through the power and control of someone else, they found a way to bully those people by whatever means necessary to actually bring them into their country.
Right.
So those are two things that I actually listened attentively and I was able to pick away from your story. And I'm glad that you shared that because this is where we're going now. We started off where we're saying, hey, so many people have a misconception of what bullying is and typically think that bullying just happened in the school.
Mm-hmm.
So on the runway today, what we want to do, we want to bring this topic, right? And we want to go back to the history,
Mm-hmm.
like when this started. And as I said, this is something that I'm well versed in because I had to do my research long time ago. And what I found out that the actual concept of bullying, right,
Mm-hmm.
started out way back in the 1800s.
Ah.
And this is how it actually started out. It started out as someone being called the bully. So there was no bullying at that particular time. It was just the word bully, which was associated with a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
That person was actually called a friend or a lover. So when you looked at it from way back in the 1800s, when you said to someone, hey, you're a bully,
Mm-hmm.
you were addressing that person from being a friend or your lover.
Oh.
The context of bullying was never around this thing that we actually saw today. So let's put it in layman terms where someone could understand. So right now, if you're in love with someone and you're in a relationship with someone, you may say boo, right? Or
Oh.
you may say, hey, that's my bae, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Going back to the 1800s, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would call someone your bully, just as someone is calling. And it's funny how all three words
Wow.
starts with the word be. But back then you would say, hey, this is my bully. And it meant that that person was either your close friend or someone you was in a relationship with. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the context of how bully started up. And for me, it's like every time I did an event or activity and I expressed this to people, like they were shocked because today in today's society, we see it from a different angle.
Right.
So one of the things that I had to do to really get people to understand that, because they were like, hey, how is it that it started out as this person is what? My lover or my close friend, to the
Mm-hmm.
point now where this person is so-called the enemy.
Right.
How did it make that transition? So one of the things that I had to do as I trained or as I did the productions or the different workshops,
Mm-hmm.
I had to now bridge the gap by making people understand this same concept now. So back in the days again, there was this person called Adolf Hitler, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who has a sign which is called the swastika sign. So when people recognize the swastika sign today, they recognize it as something that's evil. But if they do their due diligence and do their research, that they will realize that that sign was never something that meant evil or for negative. It was something that was used to collect positive energy. So it was Adolf Hitler that actually turned the swastika sign into something negative. So somewhere along the line, when you look at the context of bully, the person who was the friend or the lover, somewhere along the line, somebody transitioned that person that meant someone who loved was loving to
Mm.
now meant to now meaning someone who is actually being negative or controlling and destructive to someone else. So this is very important for us to understand because oftentimes when I was doing the workshops and engage with children, and I said, hey, you know that back in the days you used to be what was considered a bay or a boo in today's society. So you would call someone a bully because of that. And then when you look at it, it's like, oh, I thought I was this tough guy. No, you're this person who loves someone and who care about because that's what a lover does. They love their significant other that they're in a relationship, or that's what a friend does. If that's a friend, then it's someone who love you. So it's not this negative connotation that we're used to today, where we're saying that hey, a bully is a negative person.
Can I come in a little bit?
Sure.
What you're explaining right now makes a lot of sense
Mm.
because when it comes to sexual abuse,
Mm-hmm.
sexual abuse, I would say
Oh.
5% of people who rape or abuse other
Mm.
children are always somebody they know.
See? So somewhere along the line, right?
Mhm.
That lover or friend transition now into someone negative. So
That,
now that concept now is called what? Oh, that's not my bae anymore, or that's not my boo anymore. This
mhm,
is this negative person. As you just highlighted that um, there's a stats that is out there that says 85% of those who are victims of rape,
mhm.
it is done by someone that they know.
Somebody they know and they trust so much.
Yes. So
Yeah.
right there, you actually see how that would actually transition from someone who is a friend to now someone that's my enemy.
Mm, mhm,
So I'm hoping that you're out there and you're listening to this and you're seeing the real definition of what a bully is and how it was able to transition from this positive thing to now this negative thing. And it's similar to what you just said, Musa. Like when people get into relationship, they love each other, but somewhere along the line now, some
mhm.
friction comes in, and then now you start to look at this person rather than saying, "Hey, that's my bae." Now you say that's my bully, meaning that this person is taking control of my life
Mhm,
and is having power over me.
mhm. And I will share a little bit of my own experience based on the same bullying.
Mm-hmm.
The person who sexually molested me was somebody that took me in at like his daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and I trusted him. I loved him. I admired him because he was one of the most educated in our entire family by then.
Mm-hmm.
He was the most educated
See?
and very close to me, my mother's brother, and he was very, very strict. But he was, I would say, the breadwinner of that family at that time. So
Okay.
I trusted him very much, and a lot of respect I had for him because he was highly educated, and my fantasy to be uh, educated really attracted me to him.
Mm.
He was like a role model to me. So when he turned out to be uh, my molester,
Mm-hmm.
that the whole concept now is making a lot of sense to me
See?
that um, uh, most of the time people who you trust and call your buddy
Right.
turn out to
Oh,
be that
so you see how close that is now? Because
body
we call, so look how close that is, body and bully.
bully. Yeah. Yes.
So, and one thing I would point out as you just shared your story, right?
Mm-hmm.
This educated person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because typically in society, when you're educated, you have this high power
Oh yes.
and
Oh yeah.
you exercise that power to
Oh
take
yes. Indeed.
advantage of those who are out there that you would consider less than you.
He
So
had.
you would
Hey.
flash that, oh, I'm educated, I got these degrees. And
Mm-hmm.
you use that to intimidate those who you are around now. So
Oh
that
yeah.
is a part of bullying that we have seen in the community and in society. So if you're out there again and you just chimed in, we're dealing with the topic of bullying, and this is what's on the runway. And so far, we have identified the history of bully and how it began,
Mm,
where it started out as a friend or lover, and somewhere along the line, it transitioned into this mean and negative person that we actually see today. So now you're on the runway and you're getting a different perspective. And for me, this is important because we can't address an issue if we don't really get to the root cause of what's causing that thing to exist.
and
So
and and speaking about let's come to the community. The
yes.
community. Um, Back then, what I understood from
Mm-hmm.
people who have been here before me, um, back then, the
Yes.
immigration system. Do you know who started blowing the whistle, calling immigration on other people?
Your friends and family.
Your friends and family. Yes,
And
they would call immigration and tell them that, oh, this person is here, she don't have no paper. I know her place, and they will literally give you them your address
and
to come
this
just
is
because at that time they have paper, they know you are scared,
the-
they intimidate you. Yes, yes.
so there goes the key word,
Mm-hmm,
intimidation. That's what a bully does. And
mm-hmm,
this is where we were going back for your first conversation where you're saying, hey, people have so many misconceptions that once you talk about the concept of bullying, it's actually being done in the school. Now we're identifying it in the home, which
mm-hmm.
is where you're saying, hey, these were some of the people that actually called ICE on you, right?
Oh yeah.
Which is your friend and your family. And I'm an immigrant too, so I understand that concept. And this is what happened typically in this process, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's something in that relationship that needs to be controlled.
Yeah.
And that person is saying, now listen, if you don't do this, right,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to call this person on you or this company or this entity on you. So
Yes.
now you're going to be in that position now where you're actually doing what now? Complying to what that person wants to do,
Exactly.
which at that point, you're intimidated
Mm-hmm.
based on the intention of what that person has. So now you go into the process of what you call the breakdown process.
Yes.
So a bully has to break down their victim. Why? Because a bully never finds someone who has the same strength or greater strength than them.
That's
They
true.
want to have control, they want to have power over that entity. And in order for them to have power over them, they're going to find something that they exercise in that particular moment to
Mm,
have control and have power over that entity.
mm, mm.
So I'm hoping that you're out there and all of this is actually making sense to you. As I said, it's something that I've been dealing with for quite some time. I just found it fitting that we needed to have this as a topic that's brought to the runway on this show and begin to share with people now a different perspective of the context of bullying. I've
Mm,
seen it so many times in our community and they're not addressing it from the effectiveness of it. I used to do this activity. It's called the band-aid. And the
mm,
band-aid approach is where I basically got an apple, had someone bite the apple, and then put back the bitten piece on the apple and place a band-aid on it. And you could actually see it now. This is how society was actually dealing with it. They just put a band-aid on it
Mm.
and not addressing it. So what's going to happen to that apple that's bitten and you just put back the bitten piece on it and put on a band-aid over it?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually it's going to rotten down because you already bite it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which will now lead into the apple becoming rotten. And that was the process that I used to explain the process of bullying that leads to suicide.
Mm.
So these are things that I started to begin to understand. And as I understood them, now I began to now share them with the public. And as I said, I found it fitting that we need to have a conversation around it on the runway so we can really get people to understand it. And this is something that I really want to address now because typically when you hear the context of bullying,
Mm-hmm.
automatically the person go out and address who? The bully.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's go back to your circumstance where this person is telling you not to park there and exercising their control over you, right?
Mm-hmm.
At that particular moment, there was something that was going on in that person's life, right?
Mm.
That caused the person to exercise what they were saying to you. So even if someone came up and addressed that person and said, "Oh, let the person park there, move away from here," right?
Mm-hmm.
There's something still in that person's life that's impacting the person that's going to cause the person to do what? To do it to someone else. So
Mm.
they may not do it to you again because you may not encounter them, but they may go somewhere else and do the same thing.
Yes.
So when you look at that now, what I started to teach and make people become aware, it's not the bully that's the problem. It is called bullying. And bullying is what is called a behavior. So until we begin to address the behavior, which is what the bully exhibit, then we're just addressing the wrong thing. So
Mm.
for you to look at someone and says, "Hey, this is the bully. Let's go address the bully and tell him not to do this or not to do that." It's like this is a learned behavior, and this behavior is now being exhibited in this circumstance. And then what happened now? You look at it that it formulates what is called a victim.
Mm.
So the bully has to release on a victim, release that behavior. So when you look at that now, it's not addressing the person, you need to address the behavior,
Right.
which is why it is called bullying. Bullying is not a person, it is a behavior. So we have to look at it. How do we address this behavior that this person is exhibiting? And then here's the key factor now, right?
Mm.
Because when you see a person and the person is considered a bully, the
Mm.
first misconception that goes with that is that this person is a bad person.
Right. Right.
No, that person is not a bad person if you understand what created that behavior in that person.
Mm.
So this is what we're going to be looking at. So from an angle of how I dealt with this process when I was dealing with it in depth more than how I deal with it today, I was looking at it that this first aspect, this is not a bad person. This person, something happened to them and they developed that behavior to now exhibit this control or power over another entity. It's a behavior, which means that it was learned or adapted in some way. If you learn how to address the behavior, then you can de-escalate the person. But the first context of it is that you can't look at this person as a negative person or as a bad person. Because the way you look at someone, that's how you're going to address them.
Wow.
So for me, the first aspect was looking at it and saying, hey, it's not the person, it's the behavior. Then how do you address the behavior? And when you learn how to address the behavior, then you can see now how that person is going to change.
Mm.
And My first encounter with a bully was a friend of mine that knew that I was a teacher way back when, and her son was exhibiting this type of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to talk to the person. You know, they call you, hey, Clears, come and talk to my son for me.
Mm-hmm.
I went and I talked to the person, and you know, you give them that motivational talk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I gave that motivational talk, and I realized that the person still exhibited the same thing again. Went back and talked to the person for a second time, and this is what happened again. So that's what caused me to really start to research and see what is really going on. And then that's when I started to realize it's more than just going and talking to someone. You're talking about someone who have developed the capacity now of having this behavior inside of them. So you can't just go to someone, oh, stop bullying people and that's it. No, it's like you have to understand it from a behavior. And once the person gets into that behavior mode, then you have to find ways to de-escalate that behavior. So this is one of the big thing that really, if you're listening out there, the first thing that you need to do is to change your perspective of this person that you would consider the bully as in a negative or a bad person.
Okay.
You have to look at it from a standpoint where you say, hey, it's the behavior that the person is exhibiting, and then you have to learn how to address that behavior.
Oh boy. Listening to you, I was just seeing myself right in there with my ex relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Something I guess he didn't understand was when I became very defensive of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I became very defensive because I dealt with sexual abuse before.
Okay.
And because I, at one point, some point in my life growing up, I just feel like I was very helpless. I
Mm-hmm.
was a child. He had power over me.
Mm-hmm.
He was my father. I would look at him as my father. I relied on him, you know. So I thought because I was vulnerable at that time, because I needed him at that time. I was growing up, I didn't have my father in my life. And
Mm-hmm.
he stepped up and said, he told her sister, who happened to be my mother, he
Okay.
told my mother that I'm going to raise Musu as my own. I'm going to make sure she has the best education that I have. And I was very excited. You know, I was very excited. So when he did that to me, that taught me, it molded me into being a woman that is very defensive. I became very defensive and very overprotective of myself. So when I was married to my ex, at one point he started exhibiting some kind of
The same
you know
behavior.
abusive behaviors
Yeah.
towards me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to myself, I said, I am not going to let this happen to me again twice. So I became very defensive. Oh yeah, I did. I was very defensive when it went to that point. I started taking it, I started taking it, the verbal and aggressive. I started taking it in the beginning, and he became very comfortable. He's like, oh, I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I changed, and when I mean I flipped one day, he couldn't believe it was me. Few weeks ago, we were talking, and he was like, boy, I didn't know you were like that. You flipped on me one day. And he said, I cannot believe the day you slapped me. I say, and I told him again, I said, if I can do it again, I will do it again.
Again. Mm.
I slapped him because I'll get to that. He pushed me to that wall, and everything came back. Like I started having this flashback from being laying there and he's doing what he wants to do to me. That brought me to that moment, and I'm like, are you going to allow this to happen to you again? And I
Okay.
snapped. I gave him one solid slap, Cleo. He
All right.
couldn't believe, and I was sure that he's tall. I don't know how my hands got to his jaw.
Mm.
But and
So
I told him that day, I say, and I don't regret slapping you. I told him that day. And if I have to do it again, I'll do it again. He was sitting there looking at me like, say, yes.
all
Yep.
right. So you see how you gradually progress from being away from this shy person to now this person that, hey, I'm gonna slap you, right?
Yes.
That is the same thing that happens to a bully.
Yes.
And I'm gonna pinpoint something that you mentioned. You said growing up you didn't have who?
No father.
All right. So let's now transfer that into a person who exhibit this life of a bully, right?
Mhm.
This is the same thing that happens to that person. They are missing something out of their life, right?
Mhm.
So, as we were talking earlier, and we said that this process of bullying is considered a behavior, right?
Mhm.
So, behavior is typically looked at in three steps. The
Mhm.
first step is what is called passive, right?
Mhm.
The second step is what is called assertive behavior. And the third step is what is called aggressive behavior, which is that this is what a bully exhibit, right?
Mhm.
So a part of what I used to break down is that when you go and you research bullying, it will tell you an aggressive behavior, right?
Mhm.
Let's put the context into play now. You can't get up one day and just have an aggressive behavior because the process of behavior